Hi, and welcome to the second day of the Daily Creative Challenge for Adobe Premiere Pro. Today, we'll be talking animated titles. Yesterday was quite packed. Today, it's going to be a bit more focused. Now, let's wait for a few others to join. And meanwhile, let me explain for those of you who may have not been here yesterday or who will take the Daily Creative Challenge for the very first time, how it works. If you go to behance.net/challenge/premiere, you will find a page, and with the push of a button, you can take the challenge. You can also join our community chat on Discord, where you can ask questions, or you can also ask for feedback on what you're working on and how you're doing with the challenge. Down below, you will see the challenges once they unlock on what we will be working on. And if you'd like to watch yesterday's challenge, you can also do that simply by clicking watch the video. Down below, you again have a chance to download Premiere Pro or join the chat, like I said, on Discord. Now, so who are we having here? Hi, Tim, Reverb Mike, hi, Ted, hi. And I think for now, let's get into Premiere. And like you see, we finished off yesterday with a nice little edit with a solid little foundation we can work on further. I've said it already yesterday. Down below the live stream, you can find a link where you find a starter pack with all the footage that I've used, and actually even more, so you can work with that, but you can also create your very own edits. This time the challenges are kind of building upon, but you can also take each challenge separately. Like I said, today we're speaking about animated titles. I'm going to show you how to create one from scratch. If we have a bit more time left, also going to show you a second one. But what I will definitely show you is how you can create a time-saving and fast solution where you do not need to go through every step. So for now, the idea is we've basically created our 1-minute edit, and I want it to be a little bit more interesting. So just to put in a title, I can either press the icon here with the T, or if I go back to my selection tool by either selecting it here or clicking V. What I can also do is use the shortcut, press T on my keyboard, then hover above the program monitor, click, and now we're gonna insert our title. I went in the final edit that you may have seen yesterday for the title, The Cycle, which is a reference to the story cycle or the hero's journey, and also refers to how I structured the edit with the beginning, the middle, somewhere else, and the very end, just right where we started. So this looks not necessarily nice. We're gonna brush it up a little, and then we're also gonna animate it so that it will look a bit more exciting, a bit more compelling, a bit more interesting. So for the first, I'd like to drag it a little bit longer, and now I have different options. Let's start with my title, or with my font style rather. I personally like the Adobe Creative Pro. So if you want something with sans serif, you can also definitely do that. It's just the style I'm currently going for. This might be possible, but for now, let's choose a font face with serifs. And what I like to do is, which makes it look quote unquote a bit more cinematic, is to increase the spacing between the letters. I like to go overboard with it. This may be a bit much though, so let's decrease that to 300. Still seems to be a bit much. Yeah, maybe like so. And now you see we also have different options down below. One that I'm using very often is all caps. So I wanted to have it this way. And it's not perfectly centered here. So when I started out, I always tried to position it as good in the center as I could. But now working with the Essential Graphics panel, this is much, much easier. I can simply use these icons up here for the vertical alignment. Let me actually just to prove the point, position it a bit further there, the vertical center and the horizontal center. And there we have it, perfectly centered. One thing I almost always like to do is to insert a little zoom, or let me back off a little bit. I like zooms. That's just a fact. I also did this with this adjustment layer below, what I have shown yesterday. And I want the title to do the same and to incorporate it this way in the story. So we're beginning the story, there's something coming forward. The title is quote unquote approaching the viewer, and that's the way I would like to move it. For this, I select my title layer, go to my effect controls panel, and then I'm simply gonna select the scale option, hit the stopwatch, and I'm gonna drag this keyframe to the very beginning. You can also use this pointer here to move back and forth. I'm going to create another keyframe and set this to, let's go maybe for 110. And you see, I'm going to, just to have the zoom a little bit more visible, I will deactivate the bottom layer by clicking the eye icon here. And to actually ensure that the zoom is also happening centered, I want to change this to center align text. Now we're having a subtle little zoom happening here. Now we have the movement, and one way to also animate titles is to go for a cross dissolve. I add my cross dissolve simply by hitting Shift and D. The other way you can do it is to search for cross dissolve in effects and drag it on. So fades sometimes get a bad reputation. I'm not necessarily sure for what reason, because they do the job. You could argue that they're not super creative, but in a story-driven edit, I don't think that's the point. The point is that it should work, but I still want it to be a little bit more interesting. So what I will add is a Gaussian blur. The reason I'd like to use the Gaussian blur or add it is to, in the real world, when we perceive visuals, it very rarely happens, almost never, that the opacity of an object increases or decreases. This is something that kind of seems a bit artificial to us, I guess, innately. Where with a Gaussian blur, like blurriness, what we call bokeh in photography or video, is something very natural. So that's how I explain, at least to myself, that I like to incorporate it. Fade in, fade out, yeah, that's right. Okay, let's go for the blur. Like with most things, I like to go overboard here and go for, start with 100 or even 150, and you can see, oh, that's 1,500 again. You can see it's almost invisible, where when I would start with something like 30, you could still read it. And this is really up to you, what kind of effect you'd like to have. So when I really wanted to go from almost being invisible and coming out of nowhere, this looks pretty well. Now let's say I want it again with a keyframe at the beginning, and around here I want it to be nice and sharp. To not have this too gradual, but actually make it feel a little bit more natural, what I do is I select the ease out option for the first keyframe, the ease in option for the second keyframe, something we also went about yesterday. And I also have the option to manipulate the curves when I flip it out here, so that in the beginning, my blur is happening very, very gradual, and then we are quickly getting sharper towards the end. And this is what it would look like when we fade in. Now let's add the visuals, which is important when you incorporate your titles, especially when you want to drive the story. I personally really like this combination of title and visual, where here again, it's a bit more complicated, and here you actually do not even see it. So one thing we could do is to simply drag this all the way back here and make it all appear a little later, or even just to the clip that I actually want to have it. But I would like to suggest something else to make it a bit more interesting. In this particular edit, we're having the problem that at the very beginning, we are having a few black frames, so really isn't much happening. So as a viewer, I could stress the point, why should I watch this? And like I said, here, I don't really see much happening. So what I could do instead now is place a cut here, which I do by hitting the C key on my keyboard, placing one cut and another cut. Since we cannot see anything here, we might cut it out as well. And now we are just having the problem that you can't really see much. There's almost no anticipation possible. So what I'll do is I go back to my very first keyframe here and set it down to 30. So, okay, that was almost too much. I don't want the viewer to be actually able to read it fully. So let's maybe try 50. Okay, and see, this is nice. We having a title appear, we could not read it fully. And now we can actually see it. So I don't want to fade it out all the way back here just because I don't like how this looks like. So I'll go back a bit and animate my blur out. Again, just by adding new keyframes using this icon here. And again, I'd like to have it happen a bit more slowly in the beginning and then smoothly but quickly at the end. All right, and we've just animated our first title. Now, if you'd like to add other movements, you can definitely do this. And just for the sake of showing you this, so not everybody goes with blurs and fades. Another thing you could do is, for instance, to add horizontal or vertical movement. When I would do this, I will always use the transform effect for a very simple reason. So let's get rid of the Gaussian blur and let's stay with our transform effect. Now we're gonna manipulate the position. Now we'll hit the stopwatch, drag it to the beginning, our keyframe. Actually, let me go back a little bit. And I want to animate the title going up. So we're going back a bit. And then I want it to go back right to the middle. What you can do is either type in the number value that we had before to go back to the beginning, or what you could do is hit this reset parameter icon here and it will go right back. Now, I don't really, sometimes I work with frames like I use 5 or 10 frames, but usually I will always have a look at it, how fast it is going and if I like the speed. Again, to make it seem a bit more natural, we're going for ease in and ease out. Okay, now let's say we want to have it all the way off the screen. This didn't look too bad though, I think. So on the one hand, I'd like it to sail in a little bit smoother at the end. That's one thing. And the other thing is, I don't know if you've noticed, but this looks almost too sharp. And one thing that we can do to make it seem a bit more natural is to add motion blur. I'm sorry, I'm going forward. I'm speaking and I'm already acting. And what I will do for this is I will go to my transform effect that I added, then uncheck this little box here above the shutter angle. I will set the shutter angle to 180 and you will see that now, as it's moving, we're added a little bit of motion blur. If you say you don't want it to actually come from all the way down there, what you could do is add a mask, and we'll do that just in a second. So for this, I'm going to opacity in the effects control panel, and create a very simple rectangular mask, make it a little bit bigger. And what you see is happening now is that our title beneath the mask isn't visible. And instead of coming from all the way down there, it is just appearing within the realms of our mask that we created. Let's watch this. All right. I think that looks nice. We could also animate this out, but I think what also very often works, especially for story-driven cuts, is to just go with a hard cut. So in this case, we're just gonna end it. And this looks perfectly fine for me. Alrighty. Do we have any questions so far before I move any further? Otherwise, I would like to show you a very, very time-saving method to create titles. Let me have a quick look through. Okay, so far we seem to be good here. Then let's move on. And we are now moving to the Essential Graphics panel again. This was where we manipulated our very first title. And this time we're not gonna edit, but we're gonna browse a little bit. I will move from templates to Adobe Stock, and I have the options to select either free templates or premium templates. I'm gonna go for free templates, and I want something, let's say cinematic. So let's type this in and see where we land. I think this is something very similar to what I was going for. Now I can select this template and simply drag it in. It's going to take a few seconds to load the motion graphics, and there we are. So for the sake of flowiness, if that's the word, I'm going to render this out. And let's watch playback and see how we can manipulate this so that it will be to our liking. Meanwhile, let me see what is happening here. And welcome to everyone who's joined now. Umakorn, Monica, Annika, hey, I hope you guys are doing well. So it's almost, yeah, there it's done. Okay, nice. This is interesting. I mean, it's not really perfect because, for instance, we cannot see our visual here, but luckily, when we click on it and look at the Essential Graphics panel, we have different options here. So we may start by selecting if it's a centered title, a left title, a right title, a center title too. So we have a lot of options to choose from. I actually like the first one, but my biggest problem is the background. So I go to background controls and I already find the option to turn off the background. If I would like this light option here, this light color, I might change it to something more fitting, maybe in this style. Okay. And the particles as well. So I can really manipulate pretty much everything here so far. Personally, I don't want this. I want to go for a very clean title, something that I had before. So I'm gonna uncheck all these. And then we can go to our text controls. The main text control is the cinematic title we see here. Let's change this to my title, which was The Cycle. I also would like to use the font that I used before. And I want it all caps, just like I had it. And I can select here to go for bold if I would like it to. That's not necessarily the case. And I can also increase the letter spacing, which I like to do so much. That's a bit much, like I said. I like to go overboard with it. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, subtext contrast is the motion animation, which is basically the text you see above. We could change this to chapter 1. All right, this looks good. Well, I don't think I want to have it italic, so we're also gonna change this. And then What I not necessarily like is this box. So we go back to text controls. I go for the box. I don't want any box. So let's make it go away by decreasing the opacity. I hope I'm not going too fast here. I just went to the opacity option, put it all the way down. Now I have to change my main text to something a little bit better visible. And this looks very well to me. Now, let's see how it plays back without pre-rendering it. Okay, it's a bit choppy, but I can already see it looking very good. And now within 5 minutes, we've created a title that I would take about 10 to 15 minutes in After Effects to create. And if I would know how to create it, I know it because I just recently learned to create those kind of titles in After Effects. It may have taken me 30 minutes or an hour. And this way, it was just a matter of minutes. Now, if it renders out, let's have one final look at it. All right. And there you go. There you see it. I just see a question in the chat from Rob, newbie to editing question. Why use a mask over the text instead of, say, an opacity change? Oh, that's an interesting question. So what the mask is doing is that I can, say, manipulate how gradual I want the fade in to be. Here, it is happening very hard with a quite hard edge. I could, of course, also increase the feather option to, okay, unfortunately, let's move a step back. So now we can see it. If I increase the feather option, our edge will not be as hard. But if I don't want this effect, and I mean, you are absolutely right for the sake of just trying it out. Let's deselect our, oh, that's not gonna work, but let's reset our mask here. And so we made fade in with Shift D to do it quickly. Might also work. What we might also do is to really go from scratch here, set a keyframe for opacity, set another one. This one will put to 0. And like I did with all the animations, I will ease out, I will ease in, and I want it in the beginning to happen very, very slowly and then fade in smoothly. So now it looks this way, but it's coming from the bottom all the way to the top. And I just really used my mask in this case to, I'm moving back here in time, literally almost, to not have it come from all the way down, but to stay within a certain range. A reason I might want this is to really keep the attention in the center, where when I would delete this mask, my attention as a viewer will, at least for a short amount of time, go to the bottom and then move up, where again, when I will have my mask, it will pretty much stay in the center all the time. So I can use this as a very practical tool to lead the viewer's eye. And our time is nearing towards its end. I thank you all so much for joining this live session. And I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's challenge. I hope you are also keen for it. And we'll see you then. So the next stream is coming up any minute. Stick around for it. And like I said, we're going to see each other tomorrow. Also, don't forget to join our community chat on Discord to let me see what you are working on. And this way I can also provide individual feedback if you would like that. Okay, thanks again. Thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow.